Pastor Mitchell was praying over the woman in the wheelchair, his hand on her forehead, anointing oil glistening on his fingers, the choir humming total praise so softly it felt like the room was breathing. When she stood up, not slowly, not tentatively, she stood up like she'd been waiting for permission, dropped the prayer cloth from her lap, and raised both hands toward heaven while the sanctuary erupted in praise. And I stood there in the usher's corner, white gloves on, bulletin in hand, watching this miracle unfold, and all I could think was, I know her. I know that woman. But from where? Healing services are sacred. They're when faith meets flesh, when people bring their wheelchairs and walkers and oxygen tanks and believe God can do what medicine couldn't. You don't fake that. You don't perform that. Not in a black church where the mothers have been praying for 50 years and can smell a counterfeit spirit from 3 pews away. So when she stood, when this woman I'd never seen at Greater Hope Missionary Baptist before today stood up from that wheelchair and started walking, the entire congregation lost it. But something about her smile, something about the way she tilted her head when she raised her hands, made my stomach turn. Because I'd seen that exact gesture before. Somewhere else. Somewhere that had nothing to do with church. If I was right about who she was, if she was who I thought she might be, I would lose more than my peace. I would lose the carefully constructed wall I'd built around my grief, the dignity I'd maintained through 18 months of widowhood, the reputation I'd protected when my husband died, and people whispered questions I refused to answer. I would have to face what I'd chosen not to see back then, when I was too busy trying to keep him alive to notice who else was trying to keep him company. But by the end of that service, I would know exactly where I'd seen her. I would find the small gold charm bracelet she dropped near the altar when she stood up, the one with a tiny heart-shaped locket I'd recognize anywhere because my husband had given me the exact same one. And I would discover that some miracles aren't from God. Some miracles are carefully staged performances designed to hide the truth about who really needs healing in this church. My name is Lorraine Mitchell. I'm 53 years old, and I've been a member of Greater Hope Missionary Baptist Church for 28 years. I'm also the widow of Deacon James Mitchell, who died a year and a half ago after a 7-month battle with lung cancer. And I'm the aunt of Pastor David Mitchell, who took over Greater Hope 3 years ago when Pastor Roberts retired. That last part is important, because being the pastor's aunt means people treat you a certain way. They assume you know things. They assume you have influence. They assume your grief is somehow more sanctified because your family runs the church. They're wrong about all of it. I'm an usher. I work the 9 o'clock service every Sunday. I stand at the back, hand out bulletins, guide people to seats, make sure the offering plates move smoothly, watch for anyone who might faint during altar call. It's quiet work, invisible work. The kind of work that lets you see everything while people forget you're watching. Greater Hope holds healing services on the first Sunday of every month. Pastor David started the tradition when he took over. He'd studied at a church in Atlanta that did healing prayer lines, and he wanted to bring that same power to our congregation. The format is simple. After the sermon, Pastor David opens the altar for anyone who needs physical or spiritual healing. People line up. He prays over each one, sometimes just a word, sometimes laying hands, sometimes anointing with oil. The choir plays softly. The deacons stand nearby to catch anyone who falls out in the spirit. It's reverent, powerful, real. At least, I thought it was real. The woman in the wheelchair had arrived late. I'd been standing at the back door when she was wheeled in by a younger woman I didn't recognize. Maybe late 20s, wearing a bright purple dress, carrying a large purse. They'd come in just as the sermon was ending, and I'd helped them find space near the side aisle where the wheelchair could fit without blocking traffic. First time at Greater Hope? I'd asked quietly, handing them bulletins. Yes, ma'am, the younger woman had said. My aunt heard about Pastor Mitchell's healing ministry. She wanted to come. What's your aunt's name? Claudia Henderson. I'd written it down on the visitor card I handed them. Claudia Henderson. The name meant nothing to me. The woman, Claudia, had smiled at me when I leaned down to give her a bulletin. A warm smile, familiar somehow, though I couldn't place it. She was probably in her early 50s, light brown skin, her hair covered with a cream-colored headscarf, a white prayer cloth draped across her lap. She wore a simple navy dress and, I noticed because I always notice jewelry, a small gold charm bracelet on her right wrist. "Thank you, sister," she'd said. Her voice was soft but clear. "Bless you," I'd replied, and moved on to greet other visitors. I hadn't thought about her again until the healing line started. Pastor David had preached about the woman with the issue of blood, the one who touched Jesus' garment and was healed. His sermon was powerful, as always. He talked about faith that pushes through crowds, faith that refuses to accept incurable, faith that reaches for Jesus even when everyone says it's too late. By the time he opened the altar for healing prayer, at least 40 people had lined up. Some with visible ailments, walkers, canes, oxygen tanks. Others with invisible burdens, depression, addiction, grief. The choir had started humming total praise, and the sanctuary had that holy hush that comes when people are really believing for something. Claudia's niece had wheeled her to the line. They'd waited patiently, near the front, while Pastor David worked his way through each person. I watched from my post at the back, watched him pray, watched people weep, watched some fall backward into the deacon's arms, slain in the spirit. And then he got to Claudia. He'd placed his hand on her forehead, anointed her with oil, started praying. "Father God, we come before you believing that you are a healer, that by your stripes we are healed. We ask you to touch Sister Claudia right now, to restore what has been broken, to make straight what has been crooked, to—" And that's when she stood up. Just stood. Like standing was the most natural thing in the world. Like she hadn't been in a wheelchair at all. The sanctuary exploded. People were shouting, crying, praising God. Mother Williams, 90 years old and sharp as ever, was on her feet hollering, "Thank you, Jesus." The choir abandoned total praise and launched into Jesus on the main line. Pastor David stepped back, hands raised, tears streaming down his face, and Claudia, this woman I'd never seen before, was walking down the aisle with her hands up, that white prayer cloth now dropped on the floor behind her, her niece following with the empty wheelchair, both of them crying. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. When she raised her hands in praise, her right wrist caught the light, the small gold charm bracelet, and hanging from it, a tiny heart-shaped locket. My breath stopped. I have that same bracelet. The exact same one. My husband James gave it to me on our 20th wedding anniversary, 3 years before he died. He'd had it custom made, a simple gold chain with 3 charms, a heart-shaped locket with our wedding photo inside, a tiny Bible, because faith was our foundation, and a small dove, for peace. James had told me it was one of a kind, that he'd worked with a jeweler to design it specifically for me. But watching Claudia Henderson walk down the aisle with her hands raised, I could see the same 3 charms on her wrist: heart, Bible, dove, which meant either there were 2 one-of-a-kind bracelets in the world, or my husband had lied. The service ended in chaos, the good kind. Everyone wanted to hug Claudia, to hear her testimony, to witness the miracle up close. First Lady Michelle was crying. The deacons were praising God. Even the ushers had abandoned their posts to see the woman who'd been healed. I stayed at the back, watching, trying to remember where I knew her from, because it wasn't just the bracelet. It was her face, her voice, the way she tilted her head when she smiled. I'd seen all of it before, recently, within the past 2 years. But where? After service, I found the white prayer cloth she'd dropped when she stood up. It was lying near the altar, trampled by the crowd. I picked it up, planning to put it in the lost and found. That's when I saw the lipstick stain, a small smudge of dark red lipstick on one corner of the cloth, the kind of lipstick that doesn't wear off easily, the kind someone might have pressed to their lips before laying it on their lap. I didn't know why that detail bothered me, but it did. I folded the cloth and took it to the back usher's station, tucking it into my purse instead of the lost and found. Something told me I might need it later. Pastor David held a special prayer of thanksgiving after service. Claudia stood at the front, still walking, still praising, while he prayed over her again. Her niece stood beside her, beaming. God is still in the miracle-working business, Pastor David proclaimed. Sister Claudia came in a wheelchair and she's leaving on her own 2 feet. If that doesn't make you believe, I don't know what will. The congregation erupted again. I slipped out the side door before the prayer ended. At home, I pulled out my jewelry box and found my charm bracelet. James had given it to me in a small velvet box with a handwritten note. For my queen, the only woman who holds my heart. Forever yours, James. I held it up to the light, examining each charm, the heart-shaped locket with our wedding photo, the tiny Bible, the dove, identical to what I'd seen on Claudia Henderson's wrist. I sat on my bed, staring at the bracelet, and forced myself to think, to remember. Where had I seen Claudia before? The hospice center? No. I'd been there every day for 3 months, and I would have remembered another regular visitor. The funeral? No. I'd been too numb to remember most faces, but I would have noticed someone wearing James's jewelry. The hospital? Yes, the hospital. It hit me all at once, and I felt sick. 7 months before James died, when he was first diagnosed and started chemo, I'd taken him to Duke Regional for his treatments. I'd sit with him during the infusions, 4 hours every other week, watching poison drip into his veins and hoping it would kill the cancer faster than it killed him. One afternoon, I'd left his room to get coffee from the cafeteria. When I came back, there was a woman sitting in the visitor's chair next to his bed, talking to him quietly, holding his hand. I'd stood in the doorway, confused. James had seen me and pulled his hand away quickly. The woman had stood up, smiled at me, that same tilted head smile, and said something like, "I was just praying with him. I volunteer with the hospital chaplain's office." I'd thanked her. She'd left. And I'd never thought about it again because I'd been too exhausted, too scared, too focused on keeping James alive to question why a hospital chaplain volunteer would be holding my husband's hand like that. But now, sitting on my bed with 2 identical bracelets in my lap, I knew. That hadn't been a chaplain volunteer. That had been Claudia Henderson, and my husband had known her well enough to give her the same custom jewelry he'd given me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment from the hospital. Every time James had asked me to go home and rest. Every time he'd insisted I didn't need to stay overnight. Every time he'd been on his phone when I walked into his room and quickly put it away. I thought he was being considerate, trying to spare me the exhaustion of round-the-clock caregiving. But maybe he'd been making space for someone else. The next morning, Monday, I called the church office. Greater Hope Missionary Baptist, this is Sister Reynolds. Good morning, Sister Reynolds. It's Lorraine. I'm trying to reach the young lady who brought Sister Claudia Henderson to service yesterday. The one who was healed. Do we have her contact information? Oh, let me check the visitor cards. Yes. Her niece filled one out. Jasmine Henderson. She left a phone number. I wrote it down. Thank you. Sister Lorraine, wasn't that something? That healing? I've been here 30 years and I've never seen anything like it. Yes, I said. It was something. I hung up and stared at the number. What was I going to say? Hi, I think your aunt had an affair with my dead husband, and I'd like to know why she's faking miracles at my church. I put the number in my purse and went to work. I teach 2nd grade at Lincoln Elementary. Usually teaching keeps my mind occupied, but that Monday, I couldn't focus. I kept seeing Claudia's face, her smile, that bracelet. At lunch, I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. Searched for Claudia Henderson. There were dozens. But when I added our city to the search, I found her. Claudia Henderson, age 51, lives in Durham. I clicked on her profile. It was mostly private, but I could see her profile picture. Claudia smiling, wearing the gold charm bracelet. And I could see her most recent public post from yesterday afternoon. Blessed and grateful for the healing power of God. Walked out of Greater Hope Missionary Baptist on my own 2 feet after months in a wheelchair. God is faithful. Dozens of comments. People praising God, asking for prayer, sharing their own testimonies. I scrolled through her friends list. It was public. And there, among her 400 friends, I saw him. James Mitchell. My dead husband's profile, the one I still couldn't bring myself to delete, was friends with Claudia Henderson. They'd been Facebook friends for 6 years. I felt like I couldn't breathe. 6 years. James and I had been married for 23 years when he died, which meant, for 6 of those years, a quarter of our marriage, he'd been connected to this woman who was now performing fake miracles at my family's church. I clicked on James's profile and scrolled through his old posts, looking for any interaction with Claudia. I found it in his photos. 3 years ago, the same year he gave me the charm bracelet, there was a photo of James at a church conference in Charlotte. In the background, barely visible, a woman in a navy dress. Claudia. I zoomed in. She was wearing the bracelet. He'd given us both the same bracelet. The same year, probably from the same jeweler. I closed Facebook before I threw my phone across the room. That afternoon, I called Jasmine Henderson. Hello? Hi, is this Jasmine? This is Sister Lorraine from Greater Hope Missionary Baptist. I was the usher who greeted you and your aunt yesterday. Oh yes, Sister Lorraine. Thank you so much for welcoming us. Aunt Claudia is still rejoicing about her healing. I'm so glad to hear it. Listen, I wanted to ask, has your aunt been in a wheelchair long? About 6 months. Ever since her car accident last spring. The doctors said she might never walk again, but Aunt Claudia kept believing God would heal her. And he did. That's wonderful. And how did she hear about our healing services? There was a pause. I think a friend told her about Pastor Mitchell, someone who used to attend Greater Hope. Do you remember who? I'm sorry, I don't. Why do you ask? Just curious. We love connecting visitors to whoever invited them. Would your aunt be willing to come back and share her testimony at our Wednesday night service? Pastor David would love to have her. I'll ask her. I think she'd be honored. Great. And Jasmine, one more thing. When I was cleaning up after service, I found a small gold charm bracelet near the altar. 3 charms, a heart, a Bible, and a dove. Do you know if that belongs to your aunt? Another pause. Longer this time. I think it might. She was worried she'd lost it. That bracelet means everything to her. I'll bet it does, I said quietly. I have it at home. I'll bring it to Wednesday service if she's coming. Thank you so much, Sister Lorraine. That's so kind of you. I hung up. So Claudia had lost the bracelet during her healing, which meant I now had physical evidence that she'd been there, wearing jewelry my husband had given her. But I needed more. I needed to know if the healing was real or fake. And I needed to know why she'd shown up at Greater Hope specifically. Tuesday evening, I went to see Mother Williams. Mother Williams is the mother of the church, literally. She's been at Greater Hope since 1963. She knows every secret, every scandal, every hidden truth, and she doesn't tolerate nonsense. Lorraine, baby, come in, she said, opening her door. I just made some sweet tea. We sat in her living room, and I told her everything. About recognizing Claudia from the hospital, about the matching bracelets, about James being Facebook friends with her for 6 years. Mother Williams listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You think your James was stepping out, she finally said. I think James gave another woman the same jewelry he gave me. I think he knew her for years, and I think she showed up at our church and faked a healing for a reason. What reason? I don't know. That's what I need to figure out. Mother Williams nodded slowly. Did you know James had a life insurance policy he never told you about? I froze. What? About a year before he died, he took out a new policy. $250,000. Your nephew David handled some of the paperwork because James wanted it to be a surprise for you, something to make sure you'd be taken care of if anything happened to him. I never got any insurance money except the policy through his job. Exactly, Mother Williams said. Because the second policy never paid out. The company contested it, said there was a discrepancy in the beneficiary information. It's been in legal limbo ever since. My head was spinning. How do you know this? Because I'm on the church financial committee and we handle the benevolence fund. When you were struggling last year with James's medical bills, David tried to access that policy to help you, but it was frozen. He's been trying to sort it out quietly, didn't want to worry you. Who's the beneficiary on the contested policy? Mother Williams met my eyes. That's the question, isn't it? Wednesday night I arrived at church early. Jasmine had confirmed that Claudia would be there to share her testimony. I'd brought the charm bracelet, and the white prayer cloth with the lipstick stain, and a folder with printed screenshots from Facebook showing James and Claudia's connection. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with all of it, but I was tired of not knowing. The service started normally, praise and worship, prayer, announcements. Then Pastor David said, "We have someone very special with us tonight. Sister Claudia Henderson, who received a miraculous healing last Sunday, is here to share her testimony. Come on up, Sister Claudia." The congregation applauded as Claudia walked to the front, walking perfectly, no wheelchair, no hesitation. She took the microphone and smiled, that same tilted head smile. "Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, church. I want to tell you what God did for me." She talked about the car accident, the doctors saying she'd never walk, the pain, the despair, the months of prayer. "And then," she said, "someone told me about Pastor Mitchell's healing ministry. Told me that if I could just get to Greater Hope, God would meet me there. So my niece brought me last Sunday, and when Pastor Mitchell laid hands on me and anointed me with oil, I felt the power of God go through my body like electricity, and I knew I was healed." The congregation was hanging on every word. "I stood up," she continued, "and I walked. Because God is faithful, because God keeps His promises, and because there are people in this church who pray with power." She looked right at me when she said it. Sister Lorraine, the usher who welcomed me, she was one of the first people to make me feel at home here, and I believe her prayers were part of my healing. So I want to thank you publicly, Sister Lorraine. Every eye in the church turned to me. I stood up slowly. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to ask you something, Sister Claudia." Pastor David looked confused. "Aunt Lorraine, maybe we can—" "Did you know my husband?" The sanctuary went silent. Claudia's smile faltered. "I'm sorry." I walked down the aisle, pulling the charm bracelet from my purse. "James Mitchell, Deacon James Mitchell, did you know him?" I don't understand why." "Because you're wearing his jewelry, the same bracelet he gave me, the same one you lost at the altar on Sunday, the same one I found and had authenticated by the jeweler who made it." I held it up. "Custom made, one of a kind. Except it's not one of a kind, is it? Because James ordered two." Pastor David stepped forward. "Aunt Lorraine, this isn't the time." "You were at the hospital," I continued, looking at Claudia. "When James was getting chemo, you told me you were a chaplain volunteer. But you weren't, were you? You were there because you were involved with my husband." Claudia's face had gone pale. "I don't have to answer these. And you came to this church now, performing a fake healing because of the insurance money. The policy James took out before he died. The one that's been contested for a year because there's a discrepancy in the beneficiary." Mother Williams stood up. "David, we need to stop this service. Now." Pastor David looked between me and Claudia, confusion and horror dawning on his face. "Claudia, is this true? Did you know Uncle James?" Claudia was shaking. "I wasn't faking the healing. I really was healed. I felt God's power." "You walked in here perfectly fine," I said. "I saw you on surveillance from the parking lot camera. David pulls it up every Sunday to review security. You walked from your car to the wheelchair. Your niece wheeled you in, and you waited for the perfect moment to stand up and perform your miracle." Jasmine, if that was even her real name, had started moving toward the door. "Stop her," Mother Williams called to the ushers. "Lock the doors." Deacon Thompson moved to block the exit. Pastor David's voice was shaking. "Someone please explain what's happening." I pulled the folder from my purse and handed it to him. James had an affair with Claudia. I didn't know until Sunday when I recognized her from the hospital. He gave her the same bracelet he gave me. He took out a life insurance policy 6 months before he died, and I'm betting if you check with the insurance company, you'll find that Claudia is listed as the beneficiary, or at least she tried to be. Pastor David flipped through the Facebook screenshots, the photo from the Charlotte conference, the timeline. The insurance company rejected the claim, I continued, because they found evidence of a long-term relationship that James didn't disclose when he applied, which means he lied on the application, which means they won't pay out. So Claudia decided to get close to this church, to James's family, by performing a fake miracle, probably hoping to gain sympathy, maybe access to the benevolence fund, maybe just trying to establish herself as a blessed member of the community so she could challenge the insurance decision with character witnesses. Claudia was crying now. I loved him. I really loved him. And he loved me. He promised me we'd be together after I was gone, I finished. After I died or after he divorced me. Which one did he promise? She didn't answer. The lipstick stain on the prayer cloth you dropped matches the shade you're wearing tonight, I said, which means you prepared it ahead of time, kissed it, brought it as a prop. And the wheelchair? I called the medical supply company whose tag is on the back. You rented it 2 weeks ago for a home recovery. There was never a car accident. You were never paralyzed. You staged the entire thing. Pastor David looked at Claudia, his face full of betrayal. Get out of my church, now. Pastor, please, get out. The sanctuary was utterly silent. Claudia and Jasmine left through the side door, escorted by deacons. I stood at the front, shaking, the bracelet still in my hand. Pastor David pulled me aside. Aunt Lorraine, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known Uncle James. You didn't know because I didn't know, I said quietly. He was good at hiding it, and I was too focused on keeping him alive to see what was happening while he was dying. Mother Williams put her arm around me. You did the right thing exposing her, baby. That woman was using your grief and this church for money. God doesn't honor that. The rest of the service was canceled. People went home in shock. I stayed behind to talk to the deacons. Deacon Thompson confirmed what I'd suspected. Claudia had filed a claim against James's contested life insurance policy 6 months ago, listing herself as a committed partner and claiming common law marriage status. The insurance company had rejected it because she couldn't provide sufficient evidence of a shared life. No joint accounts, no shared address, no legal paperwork. She probably thought if she became part of this church family, she could use us as character witnesses, Deacon Thompson said. Show up at healing services, get close to the pastor, establish herself as spiritually connected to the Mitchells. Then, when her lawyer brought the case back to court, she'd have a whole congregation testifying to her blessedness and connection to James. Will she succeed? I asked. Not now, he said. Not after tonight, and not with the evidence you've gathered. She committed fraud, staged a healing, lied to the congregation. The insurance company will love this. It proves she's willing to deceive for money. I nodded. That night, at home, I sat on my bed with both charm bracelets, mine and hers. I'd loved James for 23 years. I'd nursed him through cancer. I'd believed we had something sacred, and I'd been wrong. Or at least, not completely right. He'd loved me. I still believed that. But he'd also loved her, or been with her, or something I'd never fully understand because he was gone and couldn't explain. The betrayal hurt. It would always hurt. But I'd survived it. I'd stood up in front of my church and spoken truth. I'd protected myself and my family from being used. And I'd done it with dignity, without screaming, without falling apart. I took Claudia's bracelet and put it in an envelope addressed to the insurance company's fraud investigation unit, along with copies of everything I'd found. Then I put my own bracelet back in my jewelry box. It had been a gift from my husband, and regardless of what else was true, I'd earned it through 23 years of faithfulness. I didn't have to give up everything just because he'd failed to give me everything. 3 months later, the insurance company officially rejected Claudia's claim and closed the case. She was also charged with fraud for staging the healing and attempting to solicit funds under false pretenses. I don't know what happened to her after that. I didn't follow up. Greater Hope continued its healing services, but with new protocols. Anyone claiming a dramatic healing had to provide medical documentation. Pastor David started requiring follow-up appointments to verify testimonies. Mother Williams headed up a new committee to vet visitors who wanted to share public testimonies. And I stayed at Greater Hope. Still an usher. Still in the back, watching, making sure the offering plates move smoothly and that anyone who faints during altar call is caught with dignity. Because that's the thing about healing. Sometimes it looks like a miracle. Someone stands up, someone walks, someone sees. But sometimes healing is quieter. Sometimes it's standing in front of your church and speaking truth, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's choosing to stay in the community that saw your pain instead of running to hide your shame. Sometimes it's learning that your worth isn't determined by whether your spouse was faithful. It's determined by whether you stay faithful to yourself and to God. There's a verse in John 8:32 that says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." For a long time, I thought that meant truth would feel good, that it would bring relief. But truth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes truth feels like standing in a room full of people and saying, "The miracle you just celebrated was a lie, and the man you honored was unfaithful, and I'm still here, still standing, still worthy." That's not a comfortable truth, but it's a freeing one. Because I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to protect James's reputation at the cost of my own clarity. I don't have to let other people perform fake miracles in my church to make themselves feel holy. God still does miracles. I believe that. I've seen too much in 28 years at Greater Hope not to believe it. But I also believe God exposes lies. He pulls back curtains. He shows us what we need to see, when we need to see it, so we can heal for real, not just perform healing for an audience. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever recognized someone and realized God was exposing something hidden, I'd love to hear from you. Hit that like button. Leave a comment. Let me know you're here. And subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep sharing stories about real faith, real church, and what it means to stand in truth, even when the truth costs you something. This is Lorraine Mitchell, reminding you that real miracles don't need to be performed. Real healing doesn't need to be staged. And real faith can handle the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Be blessed. Let me ask you, have you ever recognized someone and realized God was exposing something hidden? Drop a comment. Your story could help someone else.